that have pretty much all the software a user could use and would need.
Right, and there's thousands of programs. In fact, there's I don't know how many programs do you think that Linux actually has available for it. It's got to be upwards of. It's over a million.
I think the Debian team has close to 20,000 packages, if not more. So
I thought it was more than that.
10,000 packages, but I thought it was 20,000.
I don't know. There's a ton. It's more than you'll ever need. And on you name it, Linux will basically do virtually anything you need it to.
Lots of ATM machines. If anyone lives in Canada here, I know our lottery terminals are all running on Linux.
That's true.
Every one of them. You reboot them and you see a little tux right there. What does that tell you?
Yeah. And
Apache is huge. I say a lot of people don't even know they're using Linux because most of the internet is Linux.
That's true. In fact, Google's back end is Linux. In fact, most all web servers are Linux. I don't see them using. Well, they're not using Windows.
Servers. Same with FTP servers.
Right. That's true. And well, it just basically dives into the fact that Linux is extremely streamlined and very configurable to virtually
Flexible.
Very flexible too. Yeah, you could use a lot of stuff on it. Now, the big thing is how easy is Linux to install?
It's got to be easier than Windows because on Linux you do pretty much a comparable install in what the installation process would be, but in Linux when you dive into it and finish that install, you don't have to continue installing things. Most often than not, you might need a video driver here or there to get 3D support, but for the most part you can dive in right from an install and you have CD burning tools and browsers and tools that'll help you in your daily life.
Yeah, it'll do virtually anything you need it to do. And especially like the DVD side. K3B is probably my favorite burning software program. And it'll do anything.
I have had issues with K3B though, but
really?
I have had issues with Bracero as well. K3B, I'm having an issue now on my Mageia install where I used it a lot. I burnt something for a friend, and K3B mustn't have cleaned the cache or something because I can't seem to get a disk to burn properly now in it. I've reverted to using Bracero now.
You may have a... do you have your user cache set up on your local home? Or is that under the root? I don't know if you know how to do that.
Probably under root. I didn't modify it.
Okay, yeah, it's probably... That's where your problem's at. You need to move that cache over to your home directory. Should fix it, 9 times out of 10. But yeah, as far as there's other things. We have games that are out there for Linux, which they're pretty decent.
Yeah, and a lot of people end up playing solitaire and things like that. Well, there's solitaires like PySol and things like that. That if you like solitaire, you're not only getting one solitaire. You're getting like 300 different rule sets of how to play, and it's enough that you'll never remember all the rules for every game. You'll have to look them up again because there's a lot of them there.
That's true, and like I said, there's so much that's out there for Linux right now that we really can't even cover everything in just one single podcast. There's no way. Once you start using Linux, you'll find out how easy it is to use. In fact, I think it's a lot easier to use in Windows, and even easier to use than a Mac, because all this stuff is just basically right there. You've got it, you've got the programs, you can pull them down.
It's nice to know about the different configuration and things like that, too, because if you don't like how it looks, well, you can change it.
That's true. And
there's so many Windows managers out there, desktop environments, different ways to do things that you can make it something that it's totally your own.
Yeah, and let's go over the desktop environment. Basically, unlike Windows, where you just have one graphical user interface, that's a thing with the icons and the pull-down menus and things like that. Linux, you can actually have multitudes of those different types. In fact, if you don't like the way one looks, you can change to a different one. One of them looks similar to a Mac, which is like GNOME. One of them looks similar to Windows, which is KDE. And there's other Windows managers which are very cutting edge and don't look like either one of them. And they still work just as well. The neat thing about the GUI is the fact that you can run any software application that runs on the other GUIs on that graphical user interface. And
yeah, so if you find one system of doing things works better, but you like the tools of another way of doing things, well, you can combine everything.
Exactly. And that's what I do. I mean, I'm using GNOME right now, and I use primarily all KDE apps.
Another thing to mention about the differences between a Mac system and a Windows system and a Linux system is on Mac and Windows, you're kind of stuck in one desktop. You have all your things in one place, or it's set up for you in one way, and there's only one way of doing things, whereas in Linux, you can have multiple concurrent desktops and run certain tasks in one desktop and other tasks in another desktop. So you don't have your music player taking up all of your web browsing space. You can just go over to that desktop, have that full screen, be able to see everything, and not have everything get in the way.
That's true. The amazing stuff is that you're not limited to your own creativity on actually how to use all this stuff. And,
well, yeah, exactly.
Which is nice. I don't know. It's just Linux is the future, I think, of operating systems. And
well, yeah, you have more security in Linux. You don't have to worry about viruses that would affect a Windows machine. You do still have to worry about malware and things getting into root and destroying your operating system, but there are security measures in place, and any Linux user that has been around for a year or more will tell you don't break them, because that's what makes a Windows system insecure and a Linux system secure, is those safety measures. Is in part, you do have to be an intelligent user. You do have to do the same thing in Windows. The problem is it's harder because there's more vulnerabilities.
Right, that's true. And that's the other thing, is that with Linux, you can't just install software. You can't click on a program and have it load up. You have to have the root password to install anything, and that right there gives us giant bridge between actually installing a virus and not installing one. And
it's not just installing things like that. It's making changes on your system where Linux keeps everything up front for the user to be aware of if they want to be. And Linux, it's things akin to registry hacking and things like that where a normal user couldn't do. But a config file, a normal user might be able to look at that and figure it out.
Yeah, that's true. It's pretty straightforward. And nothing is hidden in Linux. That's the other thing that's really nice. So if there is any kind of issues or problems, it's not that hard to figure out what's going on. Just use your standard search tools and dig around on the internet, and your answers will be usually there.
And, well, let's talk about what if you have a Windows install. You're listening to this right now, and you're saying to yourself, you know what, Linux might be interesting to me, but how do I get my machine so I can install on it? My Windows is taking up all my space, but I've got all this free space, and I don't know how to use it. There's tools like gparted. It's both an application and a Linux distribution that comes with it on it. And let's discuss that and what we think of that.
Yeah, gparted is actually very similar to Partition Magic, I believe, is a program. So you can actually move.
I've used Partition Magic and gparted, and I'll say that they are both very similar. The nice thing about gparted is it is an application. It's not just like a live CD, whereas Partition Magic is kind of like a live CD in that you run the CD and you do the things with it, but it doesn't have that live application, so it can be inflexible as well.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And it depends on the distribution. Sometimes, well, different distributions handle how you do the actual partition itself. Most of them have got their built-in partition software, which will set up your auto